Love to see you all dropping your locations in the chat. It looks like we have people calling in from all over. We love to see it. So why don't we get started? So hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Zapier 102, Going Beyond Zapier Basics. We really appreciate you spending your time here with us today on this Thursday. Thank you for joining us. And like I said, we seems to be people joining us from all over the world, international as well, which is awesome to see. And we're just really excited to have you guys here with us. So my name is Nicole, and I will be moderating today's event. Before I get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. So firstly, this webinar will be recorded, and you'll receive an email with the recording tomorrow after the webinar. Next, all attendees are muted. So if you have questions, please make sure to drop them in the Q&A box that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. If you put your questions in the chat box to the right of the screen, your questions might just get lost due to the number of people on the call. So be sure to type it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll have Ryan and Matt on the line from our support team who will try their best to get to those during the webinar. And then we'll also leave time at the end of the webinar for Lori to answer questions live. There are also going to be a survey at the end of this webinar. So we'd love if you could fill that out with your feedback on the session so we can improve our future events. And then lastly, we are on social. So if you're live tweeting, please use the hashtag Zapier or use our Twitter handle @Zapier. All right, so let's get started. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Lori Roche. Lori works on our support team, training new Zapians to do support. She trains both our new support team members as well as everyone else at Zapier who does support through our all hands support initiative. All right, so remember, during this webinar, you can ask all the questions you'd like during the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. Just pop them in that little box. Ryan and Matt will do their best to answer as many questions as they can during the webinar, and then we'll leave time at the end to answer some questions live. So with that, I'm gonna let Lori take it away. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Nicole, and welcome everyone to Zapier 102. I'm Lori, I'm a support trainer here at Zapier, and today we're gonna look at ways to take your Zapier game up a notch over what we showed you in Zapier 101. So to get things started, I want to go through a quick agenda. So we're going to look at what is Zapier. We're going to do a recap of the terminology we're going to talk about today. And then most of today, we're going to do a live demo where I get to show you a lot of our new apps and how you can use them and sort of ideas of Zaps that you can create with these new apps. And then finally, at the end, we'll have some time to do a Q&A. So let's get started. Start at the beginning. What is Zapier? So Zapier is a tool that allows you to connect your favorite web apps to each other, move information between those apps automatically. This lets you forget your busy work and focus on what really matters. The good thing is we have over 3,000 apps, anywhere from Gmail and the G Suite, Facebook, MailChimp, Slack, Salesforce, the list goes on and on and on. If you want to check out our app directory, which is zapier.com/apps, you'll likely find most of the apps that you're already using today. So they're ready and waiting for you to put them into Zaps and speed up your day. So let's look at some of the terminology. So before we jump in, an app, when we talk about an app, we're going to be talking about an application or a software that you're using that you want to connect to Zapier. A Zap is what we call the workflow that connects your apps. So every Zap will have a trigger and at least one action and possibly more actions, up to 100. A trigger is the event that kickstarts the Zap. So it's assigned for which app and what happens in that app do you want to have that kicks off your workflow and lets things get going. So an action is the event or the events that happen after your trigger. So in the flow from the slides, you can see that the trigger is a brand new lead in Facebook lead ads. And the action is we let our team know in Slack so they can take action on that new lead. A Zap Run is the actions that the Zap performs for you. So anytime the Zap runs, completes an action, this is considered a Zap Run. And finally, we have our Zap Run History, which is basically a place for all of your actions, all of your runs to exist in your dashboard so you can see what ran, what data went through them, and how many Zap runs you were running each month. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to dive in by taking a look at our first app, which is Schedule by Zapier. So Schedule by Zapier is an app that lets you set when a Zap should run, and it lets you set recurring tasks. So to give you an example of this, I had a customer write in ages ago, and he wanted to find a way of keeping the heat on in his cabin in the woods that was nowhere near where he actually lived. But he didn't want to pay, a fortune in electric bills, and he didn't want to, he didn't want to have it so cold that his pipes would freeze. So we created a Zap that ran every day. It checked the weather. If the weather was below a certain temperature, we would send a hook to his thermostat, bump up the heat. A few hours later, we'd send another hook, turn the heat back down. And so at the end of the winter, he wrote us in again. He's like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. I saved so much money. My pipes didn't freeze. Everything's wonderful. So this is a great way of using Schedule by Zapier. So we're going to have a little fun with this one. You're going to notice we are all at home. We're spending way too much time on our computers or watching Netflix. So we're going to build a Zap that every day we're going to send us a little message that says, hey, take a dance break, because we all need a dance break in the middle of the afternoon. So let's go ahead and build this. All right, so I want to show you a little trick. This is fairly new and I'm really excited about this, but if you go to any browser and you type zap.new, this is automatically going to take you to your Zapier editor. So you don't have to go log into Zap. Well, you would hopefully be logged into Zapier to be able to get to this, but you don't have to go through, find the buttons and everything. It'll just take you right here. So we're going to start with Schedule by Zapier. And in our options, you can see we can trigger from every week, every day, every month, or every hour. In this case, we're going to go ahead and trigger every day because we want that reminder every day to take our dance break. So let's give that a second to load. If you're somebody who works Monday to Friday, we probably don't need this reminder on the weekends. If you're somebody who works also on Saturdays and Sundays, go ahead and leave this as yes. But for me, we're going to do no because Saturdays and Sundays, I'm not at my computer. I also noticed for me, 3 o'clock is kind of when I hit my little down. It's like when I could use a little energy boost. So it's a perfect time for me to take a dance break. So I'm going to set this to run every day at 3 p.m. Now, something a little interesting is when I test this trigger to get my sample data, you'll notice that the sample data is right this minute, which is 1:07 p.m. Eastern time on February 11th. It's not going to run today at 3. It's not going to show that information, but we also get a lot of data coming out of here. We're getting, everything is separated out into separate fields. So if you do need this data to use in later steps in your Zap, it's all there for you. For us, because we're just sending a little message that says, hey, take a dance break. We don't necessarily need this, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that it lived there. So let's go ahead and continue on to our next step. So for this one, we're going to use Slack. And now it depends on where you want to send this. If you have a small company and you just want everyone to take a dance break at 3 o'clock, you can go ahead and send that to a channel. Here at Zapier, we are around the world. People working 24/7 in their own time zones. Well, they work in their own time zones in their office hours, not 24/7. So obviously, if I send it 3 o'clock my time, it's going to be 3 in the morning for somebody else, and they're not going to want a dance break. They're going to want me to leave them alone. So I'm going to send this as a DM. All right, there we go. Come on. All right, and so let's go ahead and grab my Zapier, my Slack account. And we're going to set this up. So like I said, I want it to go to me. And one of the things that's a little fun about Zapier, we love our custom emojis when it comes to Slack. We use Slack a lot, and we have a lot of custom emojis. So we have a bunch of emojis of people, of actually things dancing, cupcakes, penguins, pandas, all that stuff. So I'm going to throw in these emojis into my message. I'm going to send it as a bot. So we're going to call this dance bot. We're going to add an icon in here because why not? We're going to make a little fun out of this. And we don't really need anything else. We'll just leave it all the way it's set up. Go ahead and hit continue. And then we'll run this test to make sure it all works. And we should see here in my Slack that we have our little message, our dancing cupcakes and penguins, our dance break. But you'll notice here when I was playing around with this, we also sent an image. And I kind of like that because it's nice to have somebody dancing with you. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to add another step to our Zap. Let's go ahead and, yes, the Zap is ready, but we're going to add more to it. We're going to add another app. So one of the apps that you may or may not have seen that exists on the web is an app called Giphy. And Giphy literally lets you use any keyword and find a GIF with that keyword. So we have an integration with them. So we're going to go ahead and select our Giphy app. And the only action we have with this one is find a GIF. So we're going to tell the step in the Zap to find a GIF with the keyword. We're going to use dance break because that kind of makes sense for what we're trying to do here. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to choose a rating. Now this is for work, so we want to keep this, slightly PG. We don't want anything too inappropriate coming through our work stuff, so we'll keep that PG. And then I want to look at this step, which is actually a fairly new thing to our find steps at Zapier. And this is, should this step be considered a success when nothing is found? So if you want the Zap to stop if nothing is found in this search, we can set this to false and it'll stop the Zap and not even move on. Now, in this case, our image is pretty much just fun. It's an extra thing that we're adding. We're not relying on it to have in our message. We just want it there if it's available. So we're going to actually change this to true. So even if nothing's found, keep on going, still send that Slack message. So now when we set up our Slack message, we're going to leave everything else the way it is, but we're going to take that Giphy URL that we found when Giphy ran, and we are going to pop that into our image by URL field. And now when we run the test, we should see that GIF show up in our Slack message. Oh, except that I did not test it to get that GIF. Try that again. All right, now we have a URL. And so when we get to our Slack step, yep, we've now got a GIF to show. And this should be ready to test. There we go. So let's send that test with our GIF. And we can see in Slack, we now have people dancing. Yay! All right, awesome. So let's take a look at something else. Let's go back to our slides. Here we go. So another app that I want to talk about is Email Parser. So essentially, Email Parser lets you create a unique email address, a unique mailbox, and a template of what information you want to extract from the body of the emails that go to that email box. This is super helpful for apps that don't have a Zapier integration, but they send you an email with the information that you need. So for example, you're getting leads, the leads come to your email, you want to extract those leads, put them into Google Sheets, your CRM, wherever you're sending it. Parser is going to do that for you because Zapier, we're all about, making your life faster and easier and automating things so you don't have to do it yourself. So to do this, we're going to head over to the parser.zapier.com, which is our email parser tool. And we're going to connect this to our Zapier accounts. I'm going to authorize that because I'm totally okay with it. And you'll see here, I use it a lot. So I've got a bunch of different mailboxes. So we're going to create a brand new one. And so when we create it, it's going to give us a unique custom email address that we're going to use. So anything we send to this email address is what's going to go through our parser engine. So what I've set up here is I actually have a form on my website. So this is using Contact Form 7, which is a WordPress plugin that does not have a Zapier integration, but it's going to let me collect information from people contacting me on my website. And so I want to take the emails with that information, and I'm going to send it through my Zap. So one of the really good things about this particular app is it lets me set up the layout of my email. So with a parser, you want to be sure that the emails that come through have an almost identical layout. This is going to make things a lot easier for the parser engine to be able to extract your information in the right places, in the right way, so that it goes through your Zap. So you can see I've set that all up in my form setup. One of the other things this does that I really love is it actually lets me choose the email addresses the emails go to. So I just automatically say, send this to my mailbox in Parser, and voila, I don't have to do any other work. Now, not to worry if the app that you're using doesn't let you do this. Most email apps, Gmail, Outlook, all of those will give you a way to set up a filter or a rule that will let you say any of these emails send to this email box. So again, we wanted to make this that you don't have to do this manually, just set up that filter, forward it to your Parser, and everything will work from there. So I'm just going to save this, make sure that it goes to my email. There we go. All right, let's give this a refresh so it pulls in that right email address. And we're going to fill out the form. I'm going to use Marvin the Martian because I like him, he's funny. And Marvin is going to ask a question, and Marvin's asking, where's the kaboom? and we'll go ahead and submit that. And so now if everything's set up right, fingers crossed, that should show up now in my parser. So we're going to give that a sec to refresh, and voila, it is now pulled in my email from Marvin the Martian right here into my template in my email parser setup. So you can see everything looks good here. So now what we want to do is create the template of the fields and the various sections in this body content that we want to pull out of the email, send it through our Zap. So to do this, we literally just highlight when our mouse works. What's going on here? Ah. There we go. We want to highlight the sections we want to use. So we're going to pull out the name, give that a name. We also want to pull out the email address. So we're just going to highlight that, name our section. We want to pull out the subject, so whatever they chose. And finally, we want the message. And so you'll see in our template, you won't see that initial information from Marvin. You're going to see the template and the template field names that go through the Zap. So now anytime we get an email to this email box, it's going to look for this information, look for these specific fields, and pull that out. So let's go ahead and save this. And then we're going to add another entry into our form just to make sure everything goes through. And let's do Bugs Bunny. And Bugs has some, actually, no, Bugs has got a question because Bugs is going to ask, what's up, Doc? All right, and so now, if we want to go ahead and create a new Zap, and again, zap.new. Give that a second to load. So essentially what we're going to do while that takes its time and loads here, what we're going to do is grab that information from the email parser and we're going to send it to a Google Sheet. And the reason we're doing this is contact form 7 doesn't actually collect that information. It just puts it in an email, sends it off to you, and then it forgets that it got that information. Which if you want to go back and see how many people contacted you and who contacted you, or maybe you missed an email that you didn't see come through, we can now put it into a spreadsheet so everything is all in one place and you have it to access to. So this is exactly what we're going to go ahead and build. So that should have loaded. Yes, it did. Awesome. So let's go ahead and open up our parser. And we want to trigger every time there's a new email in our parser mailbox. So once that loads, we'll go ahead and choose my account. And I want to make sure we've got the right one, which is the brand new one I just created there. And what we should see when we pull in our test trigger is the sample data from that Bugs Bunny email that we just sent through. And you can see here, yep, there we go. Here's the data came through. Here is our email, and that's the whole email, which is great, but we want these as separate fields. So if we scroll on down a little bit farther, you're going to see a section called Parse Output. And now here you can see that we have 4 separate fields, right? We have a field for email, for message, for name, for subject. So now we don't have to add any extra steps to split information, to pull it apart, to do anything. It is all there in separate fields ready for us to use in our Zap, which is exactly what we want. So let's move on down to our Google Sheet. So we're going to send this to Google Sheets, and you'll see I've already set up a Google Sheet where we have the name, the email, the selection, and our message. So when we set up our Zap, let's go ahead and create a new spreadsheet row in that same Google Sheet. Oops, helps when you spell your own name right. All right, so I'm going to make sure I choose my spreadsheet, which is the Zapier 102 demo, and my worksheet. So you'll notice that I actually, in my spreadsheet, I set up multiple sheets, one for like more information, questions, and feedback, and we'll come back to that in a little while. But right now, what we want to do is add this to the all leads sheet. So, and now it's just a matter of mapping things exactly the way we would in any other Zap. So we map the output name to the name field, the output email to the email field, our subject to, there we go, to the selection field, and finally our message Let's use that search. And there we go. And so now once I run that test, we should see Bugs Bunny is going to show up right there in my spreadsheet. So, and I want to show you, we're going to do this one more time while we have the Zap running live. So let's go ahead and turn that on. Perfect. And then we're going to add one more entry into this form. And in this case, I'm going to do Daffy Duck. And Daffy has some feedback. And Daffy is going to say, you're despicable. Despicable? I don't know if I've spelled that right, but there you go. All right. And we're going to send that off. And what we should see is the magic of Zapier. It should now, any second, it should show up in my spreadsheet. There we go. All right. So just that fast is going to go from the form right through the Zap into my spreadsheet. So that's so much less work that you need to do that is already done for you. All right, so let's see what else we can take a look at today. Let's go on to the next one. So the next thing I want to talk about is filter by Zapier. And so you'll remember in our form we set up, there are 3 different selections. So let's say we want to have something different happen depending on what the person chose. So if it was a question, we want to ask that question in a Slack channel so somebody can answer it right away. If it's feedback, we want to record that in our database. And if it's more information, we want to send an email out right away that says, hey, here's more information about our amazing company. And then send some PDFs and a bunch of links and all that kind of cool stuff. And again, this is going to help your life so much easier that you don't have to track these and do it yourself. So with the filter, basically it lets us set up that conditional logic of if the thing exists in the information that came through in this particular Zap run, go ahead and continue to the next step. If it doesn't exist, or whatever your conditional is, maybe it is if it does exist, we're going to stop the Zap at this point. So let's take our Zap. And what we're going to do is we're going to change it. So we're only going to continue if it's a question. And then we're going to move on to the next step. And we're going to go ahead and send, actually, we should probably not continue if it's a question. We continue if it's more information. And then we're going to send that email with the more information, about our awesome company. Stop sneak previewing. Okay. So let's go ahead and add that to our Zap. So we've got our email, we have our spreadsheet. So after this, let's go ahead. We're going to add another step. Yes, I know my Zap is on. Thank you. We're going to add that other step that's going to run our filter. So grab the filter from the side. We can also choose it. So if we change this, we can choose it from here, but you can also get it from the filter over on the side there. And then here's where we're just going to set up this conditional. So what we want to check is what was their selection in the subject line. So we're going to check the subject line every time we get to the filter. And what we want to do is if it exactly matches more information, we're going to continue to the next step. If it doesn't match more information, so if they chose question or they chose feedback, we're going to stop the Zap right at this point. So let's go ahead and continue and test this. And you'll see here that I got a warning that says my Zap wouldn't have continued. And a lot of people look at this and like, oh, it's broken, it's not working right. But in fact, it's working exactly the way we wanted to, because if you look at the sample data that we got through, the person chose question. They didn't choose more information. So in fact, oops, I wasn't supposed to go back there. In fact, it worked exactly as we wanted it to, right? It says, okay, well, more information is not, or question is not more information. So we're gonna stop the Zap right here. Now, we can still use this information and go ahead and select our next option, which is we're going to send that email through Gmail. And we'll go ahead and send an email. And now we have all that lovely information from our parser. That we can use to map into our email field. So we've got the email, we're going to send this to that parse email out. We're going to send it from, well, from me, put my name in here. Subject, so more information, more info about my awesome company. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually pre-copy this information. So I'm going to steal that from my pre-made stuff. Thanks for reaching out. Glad you want to hear more about my awesome company. And we'll actually throw in a PDF. I'm going to use the PDF from our Suddenly Remote Starter Kit to go ahead and attach that to our email. And so now anyone who chooses more information can go ahead, it'll go through the Zap, it'll be like, all right, went through the filter, let's send that email, and automatically we're sending them all the extra detail about our company, which is really awesome. So got that working. Actually, before we move on to the next one, if let's say we wanted to have different Zaps or different workflows, depending on what the person chose. So if we wanted feedback, we wanted to do something different. If they chose question, we wanted to do something even more different. So there's two ways that you could do this. If you're on our free or starter plan, you could create multiple Zaps triggering off your Parser mailbox and use the filter to say, okay, if they chose, feedback, go with this Zap. If they chose question, go with this next Zap, and more info with the third Zap. However, if you're on the professional or higher plan, you can actually take advantage of one of our tools called Paths. So one thing about Paths is it doesn't let you have steps after. It has to be the last thing in your Zap, and then you have different paths for each functionality. So in this way, we can keep it all in one place, and we can have a different path for depending on the selection that the person made when they filled out our form. So we're going to choose, instead of the filter, we're going to switch this over to Paths. And now Paths is going to let us create those 3 separate conditions all in one place. And once that loads, it'll let us set that up. And because this is a live demo, it's going to take a few minutes. So great. So you can see it pre-builds you a path A and path B, but we can go ahead and add a path C. So path A, we're going to keep that as our more information. And then we set up the actions we want to have if they chose more information. So we'll set up our path rules the same way we would set up a filter. So only continue if our subject exactly matches more information. And again, we're going to go ahead and set up that email. I'm not going to bore you by setting this all up again, but we'll just get far enough along here that it's going to let me continue to a next step. So again, just fill out who it's to, who it's from, make sure we have a subject. We've got a body content, oops. Checking attachment again, and continue. All right, I'm going to skip that. So I can go back and I can set up one for path B. So if I want for the questions to go to Slack, whatever it is, I can keep setting up these additional paths. Now, we're going to take this and go take a look at this workflow, and we're going to move into another app that I want to talk about, which is Delay by Zapier. So we're going to stay with this more information workflow, and we're going to add a delay step. So what delay does is it lets you pause your Zap. So the Zap run, it'll run for a little while. It'll see the delay. It'll delay until you tell it to stop delaying, and then it'll pick back up again. So this is really good if we want to do a follow-up, or you want to send out, reminders, or whatever you want to use if you want to control the timing of when things are actually going to run. So let's take a look at our next slide here. So for example, in this one, we have, they asked for more information. We went through the filter because they chose more information. We're going to maybe add it to a Google spreadsheet, or we're going to send an email, and then we're going to delay for 3 days and send another email. So just following up, hey, making sure that you got my email and seeing if you want to have any additional conversation about the discussion we had. So let's take a look at delay. So in our more information, we've sent our first email, and we're going to add our delay step. So again, delay over there on the side, but you can choose it from the list. All right, so when we have delay, we actually have 3 separate options for delay. We have delay for, which says delay for a set amount of time. So this can be anywhere between 1 minute and 30 days. We don't recommend going more than 30 days with your delays because things can happen. And if the Zap gets turned off in that time, it'll break the delay and then it won't run. And then you'll be sad because your Zap didn't finish running. So we can say delay for a set amount of time. But we can also say delay until this specific time on this specific day. So for example, I have a Zap that controls my Slack status. So it triggers at the beginning of my meetings, does a thing, changes my Slack status, and then I set it to delay until a minute before my meetings end, and it clears my Slack status. And again, that stuff I don't have to do manually, it just does it for me, which is awesome. So I say delay until end of meeting, that exact time, it'll pick back up and keep running. The third option is delay after queue, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because it is a slightly more advanced tool, but I'm going to have Jameson go ahead and throw a link to more detail about the delay after queue tool so that if you want to dig into that, you can go ahead and do that there. So for now, we want to delay for, let's say, 3 days. So we're going to delay 3 days, and then we're going to send another follow-up email to our potential new lead. So here it's just saying how long, so we want 3 days. And then the unit is going to be whether it's minutes, hours, days, or weeks. In this case, we want to delay for 3 days. We could go more if you want to give people a little bit more time before, to read your documentation. We could go to 7, we could go less, whatever you like. So let's go ahead and continue. And when we run this test, you'll see here that we've got a release at February 14th at 1:30, which is 3 days from now in my time zone, which is exactly what we want. So when the Zap runs, it's going to do its thing. It's going to hit this delay step. It's going to pause, and it's just going to sit there in your Zap Run history waiting. And then as soon as this release at time, that time hits, it's going to pick back up and be like, all right, I'm going to move on to the next step. And so our next step, as we were talking about, is we're going to send that email. So again, we're going to send that email to our same lead. And because all that juicy information is still in our Zap Run, we can still use it the same way that we were with our other steps, even before the delay. So let's go ahead and set R2, which will be bugs again. And that for me. Our subject is going to be a follow-up. Send up our body, and then we can fill this out and run it the same way. So again, we're sending up another email. So that is some of our apps. So while we're here, we've got a couple of extra minutes. I'm just going to go back and let's try another path. So you can see here that I used the little drop down here to switch. So we went from the more information path, and we're going to go to path B. And so path B, we're going to do if it's a question. And so again, we're going to set up our rule, which is the same as a filter for this one. In this case, what we're going to do is if their subject was question, so exactly matches question, we'll continue with this workflow. And again, you see this time when we ran the test, it's like, yes, your path would have continued. And that's because, again, our sample data was question. And since question exactly matches question, it's going to work. It's going to continue on to our next step, which again, exactly what we want to have happen. So with this one, let's go ahead and we're going to add a Slack message. And we're going to send this as a channel message because we don't necessarily just want it to one person. We want it to, everybody who's on the team. And so we'll grab my Slack account. And in this case, we're going to send it to a channel called questions. And so here we can add whatever information we want. So we can put in the person's name, email address, so we can easily write them back, and what's their question. We don't necessarily need the subject at this point because we already know it's question because it's going into our question Slack channel, and this path said only go if it's a question. So that's a little less information we need to throw in there. Let me just grab my message, which is hiding. Here we go. All right, and so this is what the message we're going to send in our channel. And again, let's use our question bot. Oops. Throw in a little question. Oh, that's not cool. This is what happens. You get like extra auto completes, and then it just goes and does things when you don't want it to. And we don't need to fill out anything else. We just want it to go, throw in our question. And so let us finish that up. And we'll go ahead and run a test and make sure that looks all pretty when it gets to Slack. And so you'll see now in my Slack channel questions, we now have our question from Bugs Bunny. We have their email address, we have their question. So whoever's monitoring this channel can now turn around, email Bugs back and answer their question. So all in one Zap, we've got all this extra stuff happening with our paths, which is amazing. So again, you can just keep on going, right? So in our question, we could also do, a delay for a day, follow up and be like, hey, we're just letting you know we're going to work on your question. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. All right, so I think that is all of the really cool apps that I want to show you, but I want to take a minute to talk about one last thing, which is Zap Sharing, which is fairly new within Zapier, but is really awesome because this is a way to take your favorite workflows, your favorite Zaps, and share them with literally anybody. You can share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues, or whoever you want to send it to, and basically let them take advantage of all the cool stuff that you built with Zapier. And so not only are you saving your time, your own time, but you're saving them time because they can just take your Zaps and just put it up on their own accounts and build it that way. One thing that I want to reassure you, if you share a Zap, none of your personal information is going to go. It's only the setup of the Zap. So your connected accounts aren't going to appear there. None of your data that went through the Zap is going to go through the sharing. It is only the setup of the Zap on what it would look like in Zapier. So when you get a share link from somebody else, it comes set up as much as it can, and then you connect your own data, you connect your own connections, and set the Zap up on your account. So nothing of yours is going to be shared when we do a Zap share. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So literally, we hit the share button in the Zap. We give you lots of options of where you can share that information. And none of your sensitive data is going to go off into the world. So just let's take a look at how this comes together. So we're going to take our Dance Break Zap. We're going to go ahead and share it. So let's go ahead and click that share button. And we're going to get a bunch of information here. So we have a share link. We can automatically send it via email. We can automatically send it via Slack, via any of your social media apps, if you like. And off it goes into the world. You can even share it. You can see 438 people at Zapier can share my Dance Break Zap. What I really love about this, and what I think is really cool, is you can actually also customize the share page that people get. And that seems to be taking a minute to load, but give that a sec. And I really love this because if people get that, they don't necessarily want to see, schedule to Giphy to Slack. They want to know, like, why am I using this? So we can change this to say, Dance Break Zap. And then we can give it a bit of a description, like, why do I want to do this? What cool stuff is going to happen when I do this? And we can add that description right there for our friends and family who we're sharing this with. But the last thing I want to show you that I really love about the share page, that is where people are going to go when they get your share link, is you can add a specific note to any of the steps in your Zap, and they will see this. So if you want to give them additional information, or maybe a little bit of an instruction of how to use this step, if you're using even more complicated steps in the Zap, especially like formatter and utilities and all those other cool things that you can do with Zapier, you can add a note telling people this is how we're going to do that. And so once you're done, you grab that share link, send it out to the world, and they now can share from your awesomeness, and you've just saved your friends and family a bunch of time. So with that, I think that is a whole bunch of really cool stuff that you can now use in your own awesome Zaps. So think about which ones you want to use and send those out into the world. So one thing about this Dance Break Zap, I actually use the Zap, a slightly more complex version where we have like randomization of when it runs and what time of day it runs. But I do it in my trainings. And so every time I run this, every trainee does something different. So I've seen, instead of Dance Break, I've seen like Tom Hanks quotes, cute puppies, cute kittens. Mine actually sends me one that's like a picture that says, hey, you're awesome. And that's a really nice thing to have in the middle of the afternoon. So what I want you to do is go out and build your own dance break Zap with whatever you want to have happen with it, and then share it with us via Twitter, because we want to see it, and I cannot wait to see what you do with it. All right, and with that, let's move on into the Q&A portion of things, and hit me up with your questions.
Thank you so much, Lori. That was amazing. There is so much that you can do. It's really incredible to see. So I think we've gotten a lot of questions during these past 40 minutes, so let's jump right in. We've gotten a lot of questions about the webinar recording. We will be sending that to you via email, so look out for that in your inbox tomorrow. And then let's just jump right in. Let's pull up these questions here. So our first question for you, Lori. So in the schedule trigger, you select the time, 3 p.m. Is there a way to specify a time zone, or will it run on your browser's time zone or the account's time zone?
It'll run on the time zone you've set up in your Zapier account. So in your Zapier account settings, you can set your own time zone. So it'll run in your time zone that you set in your settings. If you don't, I think it defaults to UTC.
Okay, good to know. So I see that the free plan follows one-step Zaps. Are there examples of Lori making one-step Zaps?
Unfortunately, no. Once you get into some of these more complex tools, the filter, delay, formatter even, those usually end up being like a second action step. So you would need a starter plan or hire to be able to use those. Schedule, you can still use. I know we added the Giphy step, but you don't have to add a Giphy step to your Zap and just have it, trigger at 3 o'clock on every day, send that Slack message and do that completely on the free plan.
Cool. The demo just created a 3-step Zap. Are there Zaps with more than 2 actions still for premium only?
Yes.
I think that leads back into your
same question, but yeah. Question. So as soon as you add a second action step, that becomes a multi-step Zap, and multi-step Zaps are only available on our paid plans.
Great. If the app's triggers or actions I'd like to use aren't currently available, is there a way to customize without coding or request new actions be added?
Both. So Parser is a good way around apps that we don't necessarily integrate with yet. You can also look at like RSS feeds, so RSS by Zapier. You could look at like webhooks by Zapier, which is slightly more advanced and is a paid feature. But if the app has an API, you might be able to use a webhook to connect to it. We have a really great blog post. Bear with me a sec, I'll see if I can find it. That walks through. Let me see if I can find that blog. There we go. Add any app to Zapier. I'll check that into our chat here. That walks through some of the really cool things that you can do with Zapier if we don't have an integration. That said, we want your suggestions. We have a great, huge wish list of apps that people wish were on Zapier. So definitely write into our support team and be like, hey, I really want to see my amazing app on Zapier, and let us know. That said, one, you could build your own integration. It is free to do on Zapier. Just go ahead, create a dev app and build that app on Zapier yourself. Or reach out to the company themselves and be like, hey, I really need you on Zapier. Like, I need you in my workflow life. We need you on Zapier, and let them do it. And then they're on Zapier, and you're not relying on us. They're going to do it and get things done probably a little faster than asking us to do it. But still write into support, get it on the wish list. We are happy to hear that.
Amazing. Thank you, Lori. So in the filter and path example, was that considered to be one task, or would each step, i.e. like create a row, filter, send email, be considered a task, 3 different tasks, and go towards your task usage?
Yes. So for usage, for Zap Run usage, it's every time there's a successful action. So in the case where we looked at the filter that stopped, this does not count towards your usage. Because it was not successful. If it is successful, where we match question to question, that is successful, that counts as a Zap Run. And then we do something else after that, that counts as another Zap Run, and so on. So for the example of our path, where we had 5 or 6 steps, 5 action steps, 5 Zap Runs towards your usage for your plan.
Cool. How are most people using account or accounts? We typically use management accounts in other products that allow the business or the role to create processes. Is it best practice / allowed to share an account that has all our business processes in one place?
Okay, I'm a little opinionated on this. I mean, in theory, sure, like we can't stop you from sharing your username and password with other people on your team. In reality, you're putting a lot of sensitive data into your Zapier account, right? You're connecting your apps, you're putting, client data through your Zaps. So if you share that password with anybody else, even if they're on your team, they have access to all of that stuff, which means they have access to your connected accounts, so they can pull in your information and send it to their own email addresses. They can see the data that went through your Zap, and if they're feeling slightly malicious, they can edit or change or delete your Zaps. So theory, yes. Reality, I would want to be more secure and keep my passwords to myself. That said, if you have a team or you have a company where a lot of people are on your team who want to use Zapier, set up a Teams account or a company's account where everyone has their own individual accounts and their own, separate connections and data, and everything is separate from the team, but you have one billing location.
Mhm.
And so that's a really good way around that. I know it may be cost preventative for smaller companies, but it is a really good way of protecting yourself. And I think just the society we live in, where you just want to be more secure than not secure enough, in my opinion.
Totally, totally. Thank you for that. Our next question, someone's asking, is there anyone I can look, or is there anyone that can look at workflows and SOPs to determine what Zaps would be useful? I need that person. Anybody like an expert or someone I can reach out to?
Yes, and exactly that word. We have an entire directory of Zapier experts who you could hire to do exactly that for you. Let's take a look at that URL. Yep, we have this whole directory. You can choose what kind of services you want from them, where they are, what your budget is, where the specializations are, and we'll give you somebody from our directory who can help you out with that. That is to say, I mean, this is if somebody you want really like in-depth one-on-one stuff. If you have like, hey, I have a general idea of a crazy thing that I want to do, I love those questions in support. Like write into us, and I would love to brainstorm a little bit and see if I can make that workflow happen. That's how we came up with the one I talked about earlier about the customer with the cabin in the woods, and it took some back and forth, but we brainstormed a way of getting that working, all in Zapier, so we saved his electric bill. So by all means, I mean, if it's like, we can't look at your entire business, but if you have one idea with a workflow, by all means, send it to us and we will be happy to take a look.
Cool. Yeah, I love that cabin example. It's a great one.
That's one of my favorites.
It's so good. Our next question is, does email parser only work in tandem with forms? Are there any other use cases for email parser?
With anything that sends you an email, it really is more specific that it runs with emails. I think I've seen it with booking agencies. So if you like rent out your house on one of those short-term rental type places, and you get like the booking, you could extract the booking information from the email. So who's the customer, what time do they want to, come and stay at your place? When do they want to leave? Any special features that they want from there? As long as it comes in an email that's a template that's easy to extract from, go ahead and use it with email parser.
Very cool. Our next question is, do you guys have live support chats on Zapier if we need immediate assistance?
Not at this time. Right now, we are only email for support.
But if you write into that email, like you said, I think responses are speedy with us as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, we have teammates around the world. So, there's somebody online at any given hour in every single day. We even have weekend warriors who work on the weekends. So yeah, we do aim. I mean, the promise is within 24 hours. The reality is you're probably going to hear a little bit faster than that. So, I mean, it's not as immediate as live chat, but you're definitely going to get a real person, and we're definitely here to help.
yep. Our next question is, in using delay, is it clear that a Zap can hold a maximum of 31 days? Is there a way to automate future events like birthdays of employees that exceed more than a month?
Okay, I actually have a great workflow for this that doesn't use delay. So what I actually use for this is, and this is maybe this is like Zapier 104 to introduce this tool, but we have a tool called named variables, and named variables works very much like our email parser, except that you can put this named variables formatting into any body of text, and it'll parse out those variables as separate fields the same way our parser does. So what I do for that kind of workflow is I'll actually create a calendar in my Google Calendar specifically for these types of events. So the Zap is trigger on the booking, the event, the creation, whatever, add it to my Google Calendar. And then I'll set up another Zap that triggers on the event start of that event and then does the thing. So you're not really so much relying on delay, you're relying on calendar to say run at this time because there's an event in Google Calendar. And if you have all the information, all that you want to use and send and who to send it to and all that, and use the named variables and put that into the description of your event, you can then extract it and send it to the right people with the right data that they need.
Very cool. That's super useful.
Yeah, we do have, I'm going to grab this one. We do have a, yeah, there we go. We do have a, oh, let's see, I never actually sent the other one. So let's send this one too. So help doc for how to use named variables. So I would do that. I would do like Google Calendar's event start over using delay and trying to delay for months on the time. We don't recommend having like multiple delays, like don't, a delay for 30 days, another delay for 30 days, another delay for 30 days, because you're probably going to run into trouble with that. So we don't recommend it.
Okay. On the schedules app, is there an option to choose a random time between say 9 and 5?
Not specifically in that trigger, but I think I mentioned that I do this in one of my trainings, and so we actually use a formatter step with spreadsheet formula where we figure out a random number, or like we use that to get a random output, and then use delay to say delay for that amount of time, and that gives you your random number between 9 and 5.
Okay, so that's a workaround.
It is. It's a very long one. Again, because I have links for everything. I actually wrote a blog post about this. Let me grab that, and I will share that as well. This was my awesome bot, which is basically a much more advanced version of the dance bot. But this will walk through that workflow of how to use the randomization for your schedule.
Cool. Very cool. So our next question, let's see here. Can we trigger events from websites? Example, like something from a courier website.
It would depend on how it's set up on that website. So if like there's an RSS feed, you might be able to do it that way. Yeah, it depends on how the website puts it out. So it's hard to say.
Someone in the chat threw in, Lori, we've used your awesome bot for a year. It really is amazing.
I love that. I'm so glad to hear. I want to know, do you use like awesome, or do you have something else? Like, does it tell you you're awesome, or does it do something else? Because I love seeing what people do with awesome bot.
Yeah, just because I need to.
Yeah, just because I need the self-esteem boost doesn't mean other people don't. But yeah, like I said, we've got a bunch of Britney fans, so there's Britney ones and Tom Hanks, and it is so much fun to see what people do with those.
Love it. Next question, is it possible to parse dynamic data? To explain further, if I have an online order, or if I have online order data sent via email and I want to separate out each line item with options, etc., can the parser handle this?
Not by itself, but you could probably add a formatter step with a text to line item and turn it into line items, and then put that into the Zap.
Okay. Parser, is that only for email right now? Does it handle PDFs?
Only for email. Our parser for email. We do have a few parser tools that will go into attachments. I think I don't like throwing out names, but I think Mail Parser and Parser, like there's 2 R's. Both of those, I'm pretty sure, but please don't quote me on it, also will pull out attachments and let you parse out information from the attachments. We do have, I know this is like sneak peeks of webinars we haven't written yet, but we do have a CSV to text or a text to CSV in our formatter. So if there's a way of outputting that attachment into like a CSV, you could send it through a Zap that way as well.
Okay. The delay example, will it be able to pick up if a potential new lead replies during the delay period? Is there a way to have conditional statements for delays, or is there a different or better way to handle this?
Well, the delay is only for that one specific run, right? So if you have 10 people write in over the span of 5 days, each of those will have their own delay for 3 days of when they sent it in. So one Zap Run's delay isn't going to affect another Zap Run's delay. It's only going to delay that specific run.
Okay. Someone's asking here, I would like to sign up for the team version. When I do this, will someone help my team and I get set up properly?
We, I, so the teams and companies plans do have access to our Premier support team. I believe the teams, you can definitely write into Premier and they could help you. I believe it's only the company's plans that have a dedicated CSM.
Okay. On top of that, someone's asking, do you know how many users I get with a professional plan?
Pro, same thing, it's an individual plan, so just you.
Okay. Are filters case sensitive?
That is an excellent question.
I think they are. No.
They're not? Okay, great. Thank you, Ryan. I was going to go test it, but thanks, Ryan.
Cool, they're not. Can you change the sample data that is picked up to test the Zap?
Yep. So actually, let's take a look at that since we have our Zap open here. So you can actually load in more. So we've got email A. If we were to load in another one, we might find email B, which is our Daffy Duck one. So I want to say with this, we can't make any guarantees, right? It's how the app was set up, how the trigger was set up, by who the Zap was, or who that app was created. Some of our apps we built in-house, so Zapier built those. Some of them were built by the actual app themselves. So some use static demo information, so it's always the same every time. Some it might just pull in like super old stuff that is from like months ago. It all just depends on what the query is when we pull in the sample data. And what we get there. But for the most part, yeah, you could just like create it. Like I could send another email and then pull in another sample for, you know, the email parser, and hopefully that get that one. But something I want to sort of clarify here is the fields are the fields are the fields, right? So once you have the field, map that field. It doesn't matter what data you're sending through the setup of the Zap, because it really relies on what it's going to look like and how it's going to run once it's live. So I wouldn't really get too focused on the sample data that you're getting in your trigger step, because really all you need is the fields.
Okay, that's good. Let me check into this next question. So this is a fun one. Can one set up automated birthday shout outs with just Google Sheets and the message medium, say Slack or email?
That is a good question. I'm trying to think how I could make that happen. Probably not from Google Sheets, but definitely from Google Calendar. Because Google Sheets, we trigger on new and updated. So you'd have to physically go to your Google Sheet and update it when you want it to run, which kind of defeats the purpose of automating this. But if you put it into like Google Calendar, equally free, just, you know, event start Google Calendar, it'll trigger on, you know, everybody's birthday, send out those automated, and you can do that on the free plan. So 2 steps.
I need to set that up so I can remember everyone's birthdays that I need to remember.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself.
We had somebody who shared a Zap, was one of our fellow Zapians, who used Schedule to like send I love you messages to their mom, and that's kind of sweet. So there you go.
I love that. Love that. Next question, can I just use part of a subject line as a field to create a lookup? Example, our job number reference is always on this in the subject line. Can I use the parse to isolate that 6-digit number as a separate field?
It'll be tricky with the parser. It's hard to capture part of a line and not all of a line. Definitely give it a try. If not, you could add a formatter step in there to pull out, you know, all the text that isn't that 6-digit number and strip that out of the thing, use the split text option, and then that would give you that number that you want to use later on in your Zap.
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple minutes left. We have a couple more questions here we'll try to get to. So this next question, I'm attempting to collect phone numbers from inbound emails, which I forward to Parser. Here's my challenge. There's always 3 phone numbers in the email sent to the Parser. 2 of the phone numbers are always the same, and I want to collect only the 3rd phone number. The 3rd one is the only unique phone number. How can I do this effectively with a multi-step Zap?
So you should be able to set up your Parser template to only pull out that one phone number. If not, the only way I could think of is, again, using like formatter with a split text and split, or do like a find and replace and find the two that are static that are always the same and just delete those from like the list of phone numbers. And then you'll end up with only the one that's unique and send that. But again, you'd need a formatter step for that.
Okay. Using the Zapier scheduler, is it possible to set up social media posts that are one time only per type? For example, a Valentine's Day theme to Facebook and Insta, and then 4 days later, a before and after photo, and do this for up to a month all in one sitting?
I don't see why not. I mean, you need a lot of steps to do that, but probably.
Yeah.
I mean, my attitude with any Zap is like, can I do this? I'm like, yeah, we just gotta figure out how to make it happen. But my answer is almost always, yeah, we can probably get that working.
Yeah. Okay, and we have time for one more question. I'm gonna ask this one because this one's fun and relevant. So for the dance party, can you send music as well to the Slack channel, like from Spotify or something?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes, we share Spotify links all the time, YouTube videos. Yeah, I used Giphy because it was easy to find, but by all means, yeah, send it. Oh gosh, yeah, we send Spotify all the time.
Love it. I love it. Well, it looks like we are at time. So thank you, Lori, and thank you everybody on this call for all of your questions. Before we sign off, just want to give you a quick reminder that we will be sending a follow-up email with the webinar recording tomorrow. So look out for that in your inbox. And then don't forget to go build your dance break Zap. We're really excited to see all of the things that you build. Don't forget to share it with us on Twitter by tagging #Zapier or our handle @Zapier. And Lori, I'd like to thank you one more time for hosting and everybody for joining, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for hanging out with us.